Yo, what's poppin'? So I did miss a lot of the games this weekend because I went out to my friend's cottage. Uh, Whatever, it happens. But I was able to catch the tail end of these NA games and the start of the APAC one. So what I'll probably do is tomorrow I'll probably do like a week overview after from some things I've seen. I'll probably go back and watch some matches, look at some highlights, things like that. But yeah, so I caught the final map of the 9-0 Shock against the 5-4 Florida Mayhem. Ends up being a 3-1 win for the Shock, so I catch their final win, which is Lijiang Tower. They win 2-1. Shock playing Sam Proper, Mikey Finn Violet. Florida playing Xe, Checkmate, Someone, Sermage, and Animo. Apparently Xe was in last map as well, and the first map, I believe. But I don't know too much about it, right? I didn't see it. So, Night Market is 100 to 63 for Shock. Shock playing Echo Tracer, Balls, and Bap, and Florida playing Sojourn Tracer, Doom, Bap, Brig. So yeah, Proper catching the point, and Shock are all trying to walk up onto their high ground, but Florida are kind of stuffing them up there and just like really committing all their resources to that. Eventually, Checkmate does go back and flips the point, forces Proper off. And Mikey does die as he tries to get out, but Shock end up winning because I think Florida used too many resources trying to keep them in. Someone gets really low. Checkmate's still on the point, right? So they just kind of overpower them and they get out and they do win. Florida win the next fight, and it just kind of happens. You know, they use some ults. Shock let them kind of let them. Maybe they don't have their ults up all the way, and they come back and wins with a mines and a copy, even through the Animo rally, and they regain control. And then scrappy fights and Shock end up on top. So Florida definitely knew what they were doing. Shock knew what they were doing as well. Shock end up on top because Florida aren't able to handle the pressure that they put on, trying to get out really, and I don't know, Proper's too good. Gardens is 100 to 0 for Florida. Shock playing Sombra Tracer, Ball, Moira, Lucio. Florida playing Sojourn Tracer, Doom, Bap, Brig. And someone goes crazy this map. So initially, right, they fight in the dojo and Florida win because they have a Brigida. Of course they will. They'll win in the small enclosed room. Someone punches Sam off the map the next fight. Finn pops the coal, but that's not a lot because someone is just doing so much in the backline. Mikey's also doing a lot, but in this very scrappy fight, Mikey ends up dying and someone does not die. And he ends up stalling out long enough and maintaining control of the point for his team to come back. And he ends up dying eventually, but his team gets back. Mikey kills like 3, but then Checkmate gets a 2k pulse bomb and Florida stays in control. And it looked like Mikey had secured this flip for the Shock, but it never happens. And after that long fight, it uses a lot of Shock's resources and a lot of Florida's resources, to be fair. But the advantage goes to Florida, right, on the defense there. So they end up winning. It was very close, but someone able to make the difference in Checkmate coming in clutch. Both tanks had a pretty good map, but Control Center ends up being a 121 for Shock. Both teams playing Sojourn Tracer and Bap. Shock playing the Ball Zen, Florida playing the Doom Brig. Florida do win the first fight, but then Shock just kind of roll back with mines and a pulse bomb. And I don't know, from there, Shock never looked back. Checkmate kind of had trouble getting in. Like, he was getting in, but he was maybe trading at best. And Florida just kind of staggered out a lot of the times. In the end, Proper had a 75% patch rate, pulse attach rate through the whole match, which is crazy. And I'm not going to be able to do an overview or a player of the match for this because, I just saw this one map. But apparently Proper was popping off, so probably went with the him. 75 is an insane number. Like, that's bonkers. So now the first match that I actually watched, the Houston Outlaws 6-2 with a +9 map differential against the LA Gladiators 6-2 with a +12 map differential, not including the tournament runs, right? So this ends up being a 3-0 for the Glads, I believe. Am I crazy? Yeah, it was a 3-0 for Glads. This is my pred, but it is a 3-0. New Queen Street ends up being, let's check what it ends up being. It ends up being a 105 to 75 win for the Gladiators, so you couldn't see that because of my face. But yeah, so Houston playing Merit, Pelican, Dante, Laster, Iris. Glads playing Kevster, Padafan, Reiner, Shu, Skewed. Standard stuff. So Houston playing Sojourn, Tracer, Dooms, and Ana. And Gladiators also playing Tracer, Sojourn, Doom, Ana, Zen. I flipped around their order. But Gladiators just look better. Houston did end up C9ing at the very end. It looked like they were in a position to win the fight, but they probably would have had to win another scrappy fight after. Because that's a whole like 25 meters difference. So even though they C9, I'll look to be winnable fight because Reiner was dead and they were walking into a 4v5 or a 5v4 rather. But we'll never know what really happens. I think Houston would win that fight, but it would have cost them more, and then Gladiators would get another touch. So I'm not sure, I'm not going to call that a map win if it was a potential map win, but unfortunately C9. Regardless, Gladiators look better most of the map. Cleaner dives, just across the board, and I don't think it was much like I think throughout this match really. I don't think Reiner played much better than Dante on the Doom, but I think his team around him played much better. Uh, I don't know. Dante played very well, and Reiner played well too, but because of the Gladiators, their backline, how good they are, and it's not like Lastro and Iris are bad. That's a sick backline to have, especially on double flex support. But like the way they were setting up, because there were times where they would position skewed aggressively forward, and Dante would like int onto him, and he would end up dying. He would end up trading, but obviously Dante's life is more valuable than skewed just because he's the tank. So just like things like that, you don't see that coming out from Houston, and the strategies that we get there from the Gladiators, it is a difference maker. Even if it only wins one fight, that's a fight win that you have to use less ults for. Houston do end up starting to make the comeback, but it's not enough, especially with that C9. Just not enough. Moving on to Watchpoint Gibraltar, it's a 4-3 for the Gladiators. Ons comes from Patafon as the Widow guy. Houston's offense, they play Sojourn, Genji, Dooms, and Ana. Gladiators on the defense play Genji, Widow, Ball, Ana, Zen. This was interesting because it's Watchpoint Gibraltar, nothing's going to happen for a minute, but then a minute hits, Gladiators dive on top of Houston as they try to take the tarp, and they just win the fight. But the Gladiators overextend off this fight, and they kind of just roll over and die. And Houston had to be with 430. So, they probably could have had longer because they did win that initial fight. But that fight, they kind of like elongated it or something. And Houston had to be. And then Glads mess up their dive. They force Laster's Trank, but at what cost? They lose. And Rana swaps over to Doom on the loss. Glads come back on the B with a Nano Blade. And the supports trade and Genji's trade, but Houston kind of they bend but they don't break, right? They hide into the old spawn, wait for reinforcements. Kevster goes and dies, maybe a little too aggressive. Pelican kills Ons, and Houston end up moving into C with 4 minutes, right? You have no DPS, you're not winning. And at this point, Reiner swaps all the way to Winston, and Dante is pretty much different Reiner at this point. Anytime Reiner goes in, Dante is either there for the counter dive or he's already dove into the Gladiators backline. Like his game plans are pretty important. Kind of depend on what Reiner's doing. Playing more reactively, right, or proactively to the point where what Reiner's doing doesn't matter. But Glads wins the initial C fight with Nano Reiner, but then it kind of stalls out for Houston, right? Nano Dante goes in and gets slept and he dies. Ons gets 2. Merritt also gets value, but Kevster hits a good blade and stops all Houston momentum. And then Gladiators are holding Houston pretty strong at the start of C. Until the very end. Merritt comes out big. Pelican gets a nice blade, and they end up finishing them out with 2 fights just like that. It was all Glads all day at that C point for multiple minutes. For basically 4 minutes, Gladiators had them, and that was it. And the Gladiator offense is more of the same. They roll through A, they roll through B, and then they get stuck at the same spot as Houston, and then at the very end, they win 2 straight fights to win the map. It's the exact same script. Houston were setting up on the C, they were diving, it was the same thing. Gladiators were on the Winston the whole time this time. Reiner just on Winston. But Ons makes a swap over to Ash, which was really big because the Bob was very important in those final 2 fights. But yeah, it's basically the same script. So I don't know. I didn't write down all the intricacies. I can't tell you exactly what happened, right? Because it happened to forget. But it was basically the same script. So Houston's offense, they start 1 minute. They push the cut through the car wash. Glads dive on top of them, and they just win. That's just how it goes. In Gladiators' offense, they're playing the Tracer Ash Winston on a Brig. They were playing Ash again. They've switched over to the Ash from the Widow. And Houston playing Widow, Tracer, Dooms, and Ana. And basically, a minute comes. They're stalling it on the cart. It's just overtime. Both teams are sitting there. But Reiner dives across into the server room where the Houston supports are, and Dante follows him. And he tries to turn back to stay on the point, but it's very quick. Like, it's very at the end, and he can't afford to get off, and he does. He tries to do that counter dive, and it just doesn't. He can't do it, and they end up losing the point. Could they have won that? I think there's a good chance that they would have won because the Reiner bubble was already popped. Winston without a bubble is normally a more or less useless. Not useless, but he's not as strong, right? Um, but yeah, we'll never know what happens if Dante does not leave the cart there. Who knows? But yeah, so pretty close map, very close map. Both teams struggling at the same spots in a lot of ways. Ons had pop-off moments, Merit had pop-off moments, and they both had moments where they weren't doing what they needed to do. That's just how Hitscan works, especially with Widowmaker. Dante played well. Except for, yeah, he's C9. Sure, he's C9. But, I don't know, maybe have your Tracer on the point instead. Like, you can blame that, but you can also think, well, maybe your Tracer should be there. Or something like that. And he did a great job stopping Reiner's dives. Reiner was on the ball, he was on the Doomfist, and he finally had to go to Winston. Like, you know, when you're making someone swap around like that, you know you're doing a good job at stopping them from doing their thing. But, I don't know. We'll never know what happens there. Eichenwald ends up being a 1-0 for Gladiator. It's just a roll. Pally comes in for Ons. Houston can't get it. Houston get 66.2% or something. I don't know. They're playing Sojourn Tracer, Dooms, and Ana. Gladiators are playing the same thing, except for the Genji. Interesting to see both these teams enjoy the Ana. I think I like it into the Doomfist, to be honest. But Reiner is basically rotating the opposite of how Houston are rotating. And this means that he can always find an angle onto the backline unless the backline's playing in the front line. And if that's the case, then they'll just win if they dive, right? So, yeah, Reiner died once, but then Gladiators just back up and come back. And that's just it, right? Houston struggling. They can't find a way in. And then on the offense, it basically takes a fight. They just walk up. They grind it out. It's a scrappy fight. That's how it goes. And they win. So, overview is actually kind of close, but Gladiators definitely look better. Right? Houston had the opportunity to maybe win both of the first two maps. But C9s, right? And Gladiators look like a better team for most of the series. You can say the better team won here. It's not like Houston deserved to win more, anything like that. And even though Dante might be better than Reiner at Doom, right? Gladiators' Doom comps are more like effective, just due to the DPS and supports, I think. But mostly the supports, I think that Skewed and Chu had a really good match, especially like about that bait play that they did in New Queen Street, stuff like that. It's sick to watch. And I also feel like Houston's a little inflexible. Like, I feel like it's either, oh, Dante's, I'm going to go in this very far this fight, or I'm going to counter dive this fight. And there's not a lot of, oh, he's doing this, so we're going to do this on the dime kind of thing. I don't know if that's true, right? I don't know. But that's just what it seems like to me, because it seems like, oh, he's going to counter dive. Oh, I'm going to dive. Like, there's not a lot of flexibility. So my play of the match is going to go the Shoe. Never in a position, basically, ever. Always doing the most through nades. There were countless nades, countless sleeps on Dante. Stops him from going in, stops him from wanting to go in. And Ryder was kept up so well, so often. Going over to the Paris Eternal against the Boston Uprising. Paris 1-7, -15. Boston 2-6, -10. So, New Queen Street to start. I suppose I should have checked this before I unpaused, but 67-57 for Boston. But this was... It was looking very Boston for a long time. For a long time, Paris did not have any movement, and Boston was just winning. So Paris playing Tracer, Sojourn, Doom on a Zen. Boston playing their Mei, Sojourn, Sigma, Zen, Break. Their classic Boston Uprising patented composition with the weird rush with a Sigma or a poke with a Mei. It's a weird mix. And Crimzo picks 2 to start, and he does that a lot. Crimzo had a phenomenal series. Just a GOAT. The best that Canada has to offer, really. Boston will just keep on going. And if Paris ever go aggressive on them, they'll kite back. And then once Paris is more weakened down because of their poke, they'll walk up. Right? It's a very interesting composition. And you'll see May walls come out, and sometimes they don't get anything off them, but sometimes it's more making Paris take longer to like regroup kind of thing. Because like let's say Dawn dives in on the Doom. he can get walled off on his retreat, and maybe he won't die, but he'll still take a long time to get out, and that gives them more push. So I kind of like it. But at the same time, I don't know what is it doing better than the Tracer. It's a Meg. It's just for Doomfist, really, nothing else. I guess it dissuades Tracer from the backline because you have that headshot. Other than that, and it supplies poke, so that's how it also differs in the rush. But I truly don't know how it's better than running a Tracer or how it's better than running a BAP instead of a Brig. I'm not sure. Because there wasn't there was brawling, but it's not like there's a ton of brawling. It's not, and I don't know. It's truly a mystery how it works. But yeah, Boston were pushing, and then Paris gets some pushback. Boston wins again, back and forth. It's push, but I don't know. Paris do end up getting some kills and get some momentum going at the end, but Boston do look better, and they just kind of win. Right? Even though Paris do push to within 10 meters, Boston very much in control. But yeah, Crimzo had a phenomenal map, and I can't stress that enough. And he's going to continue to. So Gibraltar's a 3-1 for Boston. MCD comes in for Face. Paris playing the Sojourn, Hanzo, Doom, Brig, Zen on the defense. Boston playing the Genji, Widow, Doom, Zen, Ana into the offense. In Boston, they start doing some winning. But Paris Sky back, and then they get some picks, and they come back, and they win the fight, right? And Boston do get moving off of a sleep from MZD on Dove. Very good. And Paris don't really get a recontest on it. They just die. Dove swaps over to Tracer at this point, and Web swaps over to Genji. I believe at some point Victoria swaps to Tracer. I don't know if I mentioned it, though. It's not yet. I guess it's later on. But Boston just keep on going. They end up entering C with 420. Wub dies. Punk gets a nano. Force the meteor strike, and they just keep going. It's just Boston. And then it's kind of similar to the Houston and Glads game where they get stuck right at the start. Just for a bit. It's a very weird interaction where Valentine pops a blade and Victoria pops wall, and neither can do anything. And Paris just kind of sit there because they don't have to go in. And then Paris end up killing the supports, and then Boston are forced to reset. Now Victoria swaps over to Tracer, and then they're stuck, right? Victoria ends up killing 2 with the help of Punk. And they get trucking, and Paris look like they're going to be able to turn the fight at the end, but Valentine ends up finding enough kills. So it's literally the same thing. You're stuck there, final 2 fights, you push out. It's unreal. It is unreal that happened like 3 times in a row. That's crazy. And now Paris' offense, it's not. They get through A eventually, right? But it starts off with Crimzo killing 2, and that's all you can ask for. And then I looked away because something came up, and then Paris was halfway through B, and Crimzo killed another 2. And Victoria's on Tracer now instead of Widow. But then Valentine gets a nail blade and kills 3, Boston stabilized, and then once you're stabled on B, on the shuttle, you're as good as 1, right? Especially when you only have like a minute left. Don swaps over to the ball. He triggers overtime, he tries to C9. Wub ends up dying with Blade, which is not great. And Valentine and Punk end up winning it. So Boston looked better. Crimson's making a huge difference. And the consistency of Valentine and Victoria, you know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do it. And sometimes Dove or Wub are just not doing it. They're both looking good, right? But they're not looking phenomenal. They're not looking great. And Punk is also just doing what Don. I think the Boston backline is just better at stopping Don from doing anything compared to stopping Punk from doing anything. Kingzo, it is a 3-2 for Boston. Paris play Sojourn, Hanzo, Doom, Ana, Zen into a Genji, Sojourn, Sigma, Zen, Ana. So no Mei here. A little surprised. I thought there would be the Mei on this map. I think it'd be good, but they don't. Boston are all set up on the high ground. Jujiro walks up, sleeps Punk, and doesn't nade him. And then Valentine finds a kill somewhere, and then Punk wakes up and he walks into the room where all of Vegas, I'm getting ahead of myself. All of Paris are under him, and he just cleans up because he's a Sigma in a small room against the team. And I don't know. I don't know why all of Paris was staged there, but whatever. Wub flanks in the hotel and gets a pick on MCD. And then Khan finds a pick on Valentine. And Boston back up. But they don't recontest. Paris enter B with 4 or 5. And they don't even hold close up on that arch, which I think is very surprising. Then Paris pull up, they force Crimson to trank, and then Khan hits a counter trank later, and Paris just keep it going. And eventually they get into C with 4 minutes because Punk pulls up, fluxes at the end of C, and just dies. And their Paris are gifted a 4-minute C push, and they don't get it because Valentine Victoria stabilized. They're doing big work, and now Paris are stuck in C, and it's just not there. Wub gets his blade kicked and killed by Crimzo, and Boston hold out. Crimzo doing the work, doing crazy work. Boston's offense, they're playing Genji, so Jordan Sigma, Zen Ana, into a Tracer Hanzo Doom on a Zen. No surprises. Crimzo finds a pick on Wub. Valentine climbs up into the support backline and trades for a Khan. And Boston cap A with 5 minutes into B, and they just keep going. Well, Dove kind of goes into the backline. He does get a stick and die, but Boston are forced to kind of back up a little bit off their push. But it's whatever. Dawn dives deep with a nano boost. Boston hold out. They stabilize and they go back in with a nano punk and they end up winning. And Boston end up using on B their final fight. They use Blade the Bait Transcendence, and then after Trank they find a good flux and they head into C with 4 or 5. So they also have a 4-minute time bank. But they do have to win more fights to do it, which is nice. Which is good, I guess. And then Victoria kills both supports and Wub on Sojourn. And Boston went out off of that. He kills another 2, maybe. And he has a very good final point there. So overview of this entire series. Boston just looked better than it says Florida than Paris. Their mid shot's still weird, but it's working. And I see the vision, but it's like the vision is like clouded. You know what I mean? Something's weird. But Boston's backline carries them, but it is doing a lot for them. Crimzo and MCD and even Faith are so active, and they're doing a lot so much. There are times where points are opened up because MCD would find a nade and then Crimzo would finish up, like on A on Kings Road. That's how Crimzo picks Wub. MCD finds a nade on him, Crimzo finishes it. It was great. And then you have Victoria and Valentine continue to do exactly what you expected them. They do have some pop-up. That was a big pop-off moment from Victoria at the end of Kings Row, and Valentine also had a big pop-off moment at the end of Watch Punch Gibraltar. And so maybe breaking out a little bit out of that consistency that I've labeled them as, like, solid, consistent, you know what you're getting. But they do have some clutch up moments, which I'd like to see. And to be honest, Paris doesn't look to have improved very much from week 1 at all. And Dove is still playing all right. I think he's not played as well as Glister. And Wabus has his moments, but neither are like super pop-off wow moments very often. And it's not like they're putting the team on their back. And finally, Dawn does look pretty outclassed by Punk. Punk is doing a lot sometimes. Dawn is doing enough sometimes, to put it like that. His Doom, it's okay, but it's not like his team is good enough to let his Doom be average for them to be good, right? He has to do more for this team to really do better. Anyway, talking player of the match, gonna go to Crimzo. He's finding picks out of his hat that he always wears. Absolute beast. Canadian GOAT, doing the Lord's work on the Yada, bro. He's gone. He looked really good. Multiple 2Ks, multiple fights in a row. It's just there. Crimzo definitely was the best player in this lobby today. And it's not like he made any bad plays with his Trank. It was just very solid. And Boston looked quite good with their double flex support backline, I must say. Be able to be very active and they're using their backline very well, I think. Anyway, that's going to be it for me. Thank you so much for watching. Have yourself a good one. Subscribe for more daily Overwatch League content. I will have a review tomorrow about the week as a whole after I watch the matches. And still my power rankings as well. So, yeah, keep watching for that. But deuces.